This is Christian Breton of Quebec City, Quebec. You're listening to the International Radio Report on CKUT 90.3 FM in Montreal.
Welcome, everyone, to the International Radio Report for Sunday, April the 23rd, 2023. My name's Sheldon, here with Jill. Thank you for joining us on our weekly 30-minute show about radio. Our email address, if you'd like to reach us, radioreport@yahoo.com. We're live streaming and archived at ckut.ca here in Montreal. Our Facebook group, International Radio Report. You can join the group and participate. Look for International Radio Report on Facebook. And on YouTube, we have our YouTube channel where you can listen to the current show and previous shows if you like to go back and check something out. youtube.com/@IRR to find our channel. So we'll get going right away. We talked a lot last week about a big event taking place, World Amateur Radio Day, which we hope some of you participated in on April the 18th. Gilles, you were kind of excited about doing it. You have your HF license and we're all set up, ready to roll. But I think you have some comments about what took place.
Yeah, so one of the first things that I was excited about is to go on the air and contact the RAC stations, the Radio Amateurs of Canada stations. I went on the air and I started looking at the clusters, seeing who's on the air, is there anything on the air? And as time went by, I was a little surprised at the fact that there was just a couple of RAC stations, 2 or 3. And I thought, well, maybe, tomorrow, because it started 0 UTC, which was, in the evening. And I thought maybe tomorrow, the full day of the World Amateur Radio Day is going to be better. It wasn't better. There was maybe 5 stations that popped up of all the RAC stations that could get on the air. Yeah, I want to rant at RAC a little here for that. If you advertise on your webpage, now I understand that, getting an operator on the air requires that you talk to them and let them know that it'd be fun if they'd be on the air. So, I don't know. And maybe next year you should say, well, there could be some RAC stations on the air, but don't say it in a way that, all of them are going to be there, because that was not the case. Most of them I've noticed that are only operating when, like, for example, the Canada Day contest or the Winter Canada Day contest. They are there all the time pretty much, but out of these 2 events, a lot of them don't seem to be active in general. From overseas, there were so many of them that were really, really cool. One in the United States in North Carolina, W1W, which was operated kind of as a net. So it's like, you would take calls and we'd all give our calls, and then you would go out to each station one after the other. And there was other ones like there was E7WARD, which was in Bosnia. There was N9A23WARD in Croatia. There's a 9Y also stations that I contacted, which was in Trinidad and Tobago. And so, and many others. It was really a lot of fun. So I have to rant at the RAC, but at the same time, I had a lot of fun. So next year at the World Amateur Radio Day, do get on the air. It's a lot of fun.
Just wondering, you found some of the stations on the clusters. Like if somebody was on the air and you just had to go find them, would they necessarily all show up on the cluster if they were on the air? Or would you have some of them that might be out there, but you had to go hunt for them?
Yeah, well, I thought about it first because I was maybe thinking, well, if you're on the air, you're not automatically on a cluster, of course. You have to be reported by somebody. But because of the nature of what these stations are all about, which is special event stations for the RAC, and especially because a lot of them are in very unique locations like, Northern Canada, where we don't hear a lot of stations, they would have showed up because they would have had some people reporting them for sure. So unless they reported for a really short time, I think they just weren't on the air.
Yeah, either that or maybe they were on for, as you say, a really short period of time or something. It was a Tuesday as opposed to some of these events that take place over the weekends, which maybe had some impact. So yeah, I don't know. It is kind of odd because I know in past events when those stations are supposed to be on, they usually are on from RAC, even if it's only for, an hour or two at a time or whatever. But that's kind of disappointing that they weren't all out there. I'm sure they would have made a lot of contacts, even places like Prince Edward Island, where there's not a lot of hams, and certainly the 3 territories. If the stations were active there, they would have attracted a lot of attention. Nice to see that there were a lot of international stations on, and we'll see what happens next time around for World Amateur Radio Day. So we move on to a story that's continuing to grow in coverage, and that is the decision of automakers to pull AM radios from their line of new cars coming out. And we've already covered a lot of stories about this, and now there's really something quite interesting that's happened this week. We have 2 stories, and we'll also have some audio clips for you on this. The first one from Radio World from T. Carter Ross is Mike Pence lends voice to Save AM campaign. The campaign to keep AM radio in electric vehicles and other new cars is getting support from Mike Pence. The former vice president of the U.S. voices part of a PSA airing on WABC radio in New York City. John Katsimatsis, owner of Red Apple Media, which owns WABC, is leading the Save AM radio campaign. In reaching out to political contacts who might help support his call to protect AM radio, he asked Pence to voice the spot. In the 1-minute spot, Pence calls AM talk radio a meeting place for the American people and says, quote, making sure that these new electric vehicles include FM and AM, as well as all the other new technologies, I think is a real priority for the free flow of information in America. WABC Radio is also airing a second spot without the former vice president. Both spots end with a call for listeners to contact their federal representatives and point to an online petition site. He hopes other stations will carry the PSAs. During the National Association of Broadcasters show 2023, he has been meeting with members of the FCC and Federal Emergency Management Agency, making his point that AM radio is a critical part of the nation's emergency response network. The automotive industry is doing a huge disservice to Americans by even considering the removal of AM radio from cars. They are putting the safety of Americans at peril by putting profits before people. Americans deserve better. Auto manufacturers have stated that electric vehicles motors generate electromagnetic interference that affects AM radio frequencies. In March 2023, Ford announced it would not install AM radio in gas or electric-powered 2024 models. I'm urging all AM and FM radio stations, the NAB and the RAB, and state broadcast associations to band together and bring common sense to Ford and other auto manufacturers. So obviously he has a vested interest, one of the owners of WABC Radio, which is an AM radio station, and a big, powerful one at that. So nice that he managed to convince the former vice president to do that, and that they're running those announcements. Whether other stations will start doing it or not remains to be seen. We're going to let you hear them, and if you're tied into a radio station somewhere, maybe you might like to try to get them to air them as well.
In times of emergency, AM radio could be your only source of information.
Manufacturers like Tesla and several other car companies are getting rid of AM radio.
AM radio is a part of the emergency alert system.
Crucial safety information during hurricanes, floods, blackouts, and other disasters in our area is on AM radio.
Certain auto manufacturers have dropped AM radio from their current and future vehicles. Write your representative representative now to maintain broadcast AM radio. Everyone should have a hand crank emergency radio and a battery operated radio for when crucial information is necessary and internet may not be available. Write your representative today. Go to WABCRadio.com/SaveAMRadio. Sign the petition. Go to WABCRadio.com/SaveAMRadio. In times of emergency, AM radio could be your only source of information.
Manufacturers like Tesla and several other car companies are getting rid of AM radio.
AM radio is a part of the emergency alert system. Here's former Vice President Mike Pence about AM radio.
Talk radio and WABC and elsewhere around the country all took off, and it's become a meeting place for the American people. It's where we come together, we get information, making sure that these new electric vehicles include FM and AM as well as all the other new technology, I think is a real priority for the free flow of information in America.
Write your representative today. Go to WABCRadio.com/SaveAMRadio. Sign the petition. Go to WABCRadio.com/SaveAMRadio.
In a related story, we have the NAB that is launching some public service announcements for Depend on AM campaign by T. Carter Ross, Radio World. With automakers looking to remove AM from the car dashboard, NAB is releasing a series of PSAs highlighting the importance of AM to the emergency alert system listeners' lives. There is no more important issue for radio listeners than ensuring AM/FM signals continue to be accessible in the automobile of the future, stated the NAB president and CEO Curtis Legite. The 6 30-second spots available in English and Spanish are the latest addition to the NAB's recently launched Depend on AM radio campaign. The spots urge listeners to text AM to 52886 to contact members of Congress with a call to keep AM radio in cars. These new resources are important pieces of NAB's advocacy work to ensure that radio's unique ability to reach audiences with local content, entertainment, and emergency alerts is maintained in the Autodash for years to come. Local stations are encouraged to harness these tools to remind listeners of the irreplaceable role radio plays in their communities. The spots, along with the digital ads, scripts, social media cards, and other resources, can be downloaded from the NAB's AM Radio Toolkit website. Once again, it's fun to see that there's a lot of work being done to try to keep AM radio and how important it is. And we've chosen a couple of clips from the 6 clips that they have available that we thought you'd like to hear.
More than 80 million Americans depend on AM radio for their news, traffic, weather, sports, and a community connection. It's the backbone of the emergency alert system, keeping us safe in dangerous times. It's critical that we keep AM radio in cars, because when cell and internet services are down, this free emergency service could be your only lifeline. Text AM to 52886 and tell Congress we need AM radio in cars. This message furnished by the National Association of Broadcasters. More than a century, AM radio has evolved to meet the needs of our community. In their car, at home, or on the job, more than 80 million listeners depend on AM radio each month. AM radio is also the backbone of the emergency alert system, which keeps us safe in dangerous times. It's reliable, free, and public safety depends on it. Text AM to 52886 and tell Congress we need AM radio in cars. This message furnished by the National Association of Broadcasters.
Next, we move on to announce some radio award winners. This is the annual Crystal Radio Award winners from the National Association of Broadcasters. The story comes from Radio World. On Tuesday at the NAB show, the National Association of Broadcasters announced the 10 winners of its 36th annual NAB Crystal Radio Awards. There were 9 FM stations and 1 AM station. Since 1987, the awards have recognized radio stations for their exceptional year-round commitment to community service. The 2023 NAB Crystal Radio Award recipients list were chosen from 50 previously announced finalists. Finalists were honored and winners were announced during the We Are Broadcasters celebration in Las Vegas. The winners were chosen by a panel of judges representing the broadcast industry, community service organizations, and public relation firms, says the NAB. So the award winners are KBCO-FM in Denver, Colorado, KBXX-FM in Houston, Texas, KCYY-FM San Antonio, Texas, KKHJ-FM in Pago Pago, American Samoa, KOSI-FM in Denver, Colorado, KSTP-FM in Minneapolis, St. Paul, Minnesota, WALR-FM in Atlanta, Georgia, WREW-FM in Cincinnati, Ohio, the only AM station, WTMJ-AM in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, and finally WUSL-FM in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. The NAB also presented Bonneville International's KTAR in Phoenix, Arizona, with the esteemed Crystal Heritage Award during the ceremony, recognizing the station for winning 5 Crystal Radio Awards. Ryan Hatch, Senior Vice President, Marketing Manager for Bonneville Phoenix, accepted the award on behalf of the radio station.
So congratulations to the winners, and it's cool to see that there's these awards going on. We'd like to see more AM stations maybe win in these categories.
I wonder if that's a bit of a sign, that people might use that who want to get rid of AM radio stations and say, well, look, 9 out of 10 award winners were FM stations. It doesn't help the cause all that much, I guess. But WTMJ, actually, I've heard that station from here in Montreal, actually.
Oh, wow.
I forget the frequency that they're on, but I think it's one of the news talk stations in Milwaukee, if I remember correctly. I have to check that out to be sure. Next, we move on to things going on up in the sky, on the sun.
So, if we take out exploding rockets,
yes,
there's something happening. There are things happening with the sun. We had a week of rather quiet conditions, not a lot happening. A lot of sunspot groups, but they were pretty quiet. We did have a little bit of unsettled conditions. Overall, the week was great, and I was listening to the standard stations I hear all the time when propagation's good, and I could say that, it's really a good time to turn on the radio. So this week ahead, we have still quite a few numbers of sunspot groups on the sun. Pretty quiet in general, no real threat happening from any of the sunspots right now. There's no coronal hole, so the sun's going to be rather quiet. But it's good propagation. The sunspot number is at 97. The solar flux is at 147. And you know what? To enjoy the great propagation this week, you have to turn on the radio and listen.
Bonjour, vous êtes à l'écoute du International Radio Report sur CKUT 90,3 FM à Montréal, une émission de 30 minutes tous les dimanches matins qui parle du merveilleux monde de la radio, autant international que local.
Now, we've been on the air for a long time here on this show, since November 1987. I'm not sure if anybody out there has been with us since the beginning, but when it comes to those years, we're just youngsters compared to this next story that we have.
So there's a Texas woman that becomes the longest serving female radio presenter in the world. So this is via The Guardian. Mary McCoy spent part of her childhood growing up in a tent without electricity or running water, became a voice on the radio at the age of 12, and once shared a stage with the king of rock and roll. Now McCoy's remarkable life and career have been taking another turn. Guinness World Records announced on Tuesday that it had recently verified McCoy as the globe's longest-serving female radio presenter after nearly 72 years on the airwaves. The 85-year-old native of Texas met the news with a bit of an understatement, telling Guinness, "Radio has been my life for as long as I can remember." As McCoy has told it, the path to her record began after her family moved to Conroe, Texas, about 40 miles, 64 kilometers north of Houston, in the late 40s. She recalled living in a tent with no basic utilities for a time and would take breaks from that rugged existence by learning to yodel and singing at talent shows. She got her big break in 1951 at the age of 12 when she signed up to participate in a talent show at the KMCO radio station and told her presenters she wanted her very own show. They liked what they heard. KMCO gave her a 15-minute singing show. She reported to her first day at work at the station on April 20th, 1951. 4 months later, the station promoted her to the position of presenter, or DJ. She had held on to that job ever since, even as the radio station changed owners and names, first to KIKR and now K-Star. As part of her job with K-Star, McCoy hosts a 2-hour show of country music classics, 6 days a week, according to Guinness. She had already earned induction into the Texas Radio Hall of Fame before Guinness confirmed her new record on 15 February. Guinness's announcement noted that McCoy beat the previous holder of the record for longest career as a female radio DJ by 3 years. In an interview with The Guardian on Tuesday, McCoy said she was particularly proud to have achieved a world record. She added that her affection for her community and Conroe has been the primary motivation for her to keep her role for so many years. It's just love for the people and the way they always had a lot of respect for me, McCoy said. That's why I stayed. Well, this is fantastic, doing a career in radio for such a long time, and with such a difficult start too, living in a tent with no basic utilities.
72 years is just remarkable. It's hard to imagine anybody doing anything, for that long or anywhere close to that long. I'm curious who the previous record holder was, though, because that lady held it for what would have been 69 years. So I'm not sure who that was. They don't mention that in the article, but I don't know if anybody else will ever top that, particularly in today's volatile world of radio, where people don't seem to stick around very long at one place anyways. Maybe some people stay on the air for a while, but probably hopping around quite a bit. But,
and she had a little bit of luck in here too, because they changed ownership of the station. Sometimes it means we also change the programming, but she held on to that position still.
Exactly. Yeah, that's pretty impressive to survive changes, format changes probably along the way as well. So anyways, and working 6 days a week too. Yeah. That's pretty amazing. We're moving across the ocean and landing in India for our next story. And it comes once again from T. Carter Ross at Radio World. India plans for an FM expansion. Speaking at the Broadcast Engineering Society Expo 2023 in February, Apurva Chandra, Secretary of the Ministry of Information and Broadcasting, announced that the government is looking towards an FM expansion for India. As of June 2022, 388 private FM stations are on the air in India, primarily in large cities. National broadcaster All India Radio operates nearly 500 FM transmitters across the country. Chandra said that despite the large number of FM stations in India, only about 60% of the Indian population is covered by FM signals. Chandra said the ministry hopes to take to auction FM licenses later this year for Tier 2 cities, having a population of 50,000 to 100,000 people, and Tier 3 cities having a population of 20,000 to 50,000. In addition to the auction of new private FM licenses, Chandra said the Indian government recently allocated about $302,000 to the Broadcasting Infrastructure and Network Development Plan, which will support upgrading public service broadcaster Prasar Bharati's infrastructure, including All India Radio, over the next 4 years. Also, during the BES Expo, the ministry's joint secretary noted that community radio broadcasting continues to grow in India. About 50 new community radio stations went on the air during 2022, and the ministry is working with the Indian Institute of Mass Communication in New Delhi to develop best practices guidelines. The Joint Secretary noted that the ministry is ready to work with the Ministry of Electronics and Information Technology and Ministry of Communications to support the expansion of community radio in the country. Now, India is one of those countries with, well over 1 billion people in it, and some very remote areas as well. They also are one of the countries that still uses shortwave domestic relays to reach some of those far out regions as well. And I guess what they're going to try to do is cover many of those cities now with FM transmitters. But that's a lot of stations to try to install and get them into probably some difficult areas to access as well. So good to see that those people are going to be looking forward to hearing some new radio stations serving them in their communities.
Yeah, they're going to need a lot of them because India will be the most populated country in the world in mid-2023, beating China. So they will need a lot of FM relays, I guess.
And they're going to need a lot of radios.
Oh, yeah.
There's a lot of old radios probably out there, but some people may like to get some nice new ones out there as well. So Texan, are you listening?
Yeah.
You might have some customers out there if all of this goes through.
And who knows, maybe some Indian manufacturer.
You know, that's quite possible. I'm certain, some of these radios are pretty simple, not that complicated to throw together. So I don't know. Have you ever come across anything?
I've seen a couple of models manufactured, but I can't say that I've seen anything recently. I know that one of the DRM portables that popped up for a while was made in India.
Well, we'll see what happens with that. I don't know how long this will all take, but at least they've got the ball rolling.
So we have upcoming ham radio contests.
Let's hope these ones are active. You don't want to have to rant about these ones. But one I'm sure that will be extremely active because it is taking place in Florida, and there are a lot of ham radio operators in Florida. It's the Florida QSO Party, April 29th, 1600 Zulu to April 30th, 0200 Zulu, and then again April 30th from 1200 Zulu to 2200 Zulu. Looks like they're giving people a chance to sleep during this one. It's sponsored by the Florida Contest Group. It's all modes, phone, CW, and mixed. Actually, not all. It doesn't say digital. So I guess it's you could do phone or CW or a combination of both. Yep. It's 40 meters through 10 meters. They're not doing 160 or 80, and they're not doing the work bands.
There's the 1010 International Spring Contest, digital, from 001 Zulu April 29th to 2359 Zulu April 30th, organized by the 1010 International. Band 10 meters, and it's all digital modes. This should be good because 10 meters has been open every single day.
And finally, from Switzerland, the Helvetia contest, 1300 Zulu, April 29th to 1259 Zulu, April 30th. This organized by, I like the name of this organization, the Union of Swiss Shortwave Amateurs. The band's 160 through 10 meters. And this one is all modes, CW, SSB, and digital. So look for a lot of Swiss ham radio operators on the air for that particular contest. Have some fun with that if you're a ham operator, and if you're just a shortwave listener, you can tune into them as well and see how many stations you can hear. There'll be other stations from around the world trying to work the Swiss operators as well. So that should be fun.
And we are out of time.
We are. We thank you for tuning in to us. 30 minutes goes by very quickly. If you have any interesting stories to pass along to us, please feel free to do so. You can email them to radioreport@yahoo.com, or you can post them directly on our Facebook group, which is International Radio Report. That's it for us this week. Have a great week. We'll talk to you again next Sunday morning with the next edition of the International Radio Report on CKUT 90.3 FM in Montreal.
Bye-bye.